So this activity I call Hold Your Breath for very obvious reasons, as you will see. And I use this activity as an immediate follow-up to A Tale of Two Acids, which you can also view on this website. And the reason I think it's important to follow A Tale of Two Acids with Hold Your Breath is in the Two Acids demonstration, I make a big deal about how ocean acidification is not a dramatic decline in pH. We're not turning the oceans into lemon juice, for example. But I do show people in that demonstration that carbon dioxide is capable of reducing the pH of water slightly, which continues to not impress people, unless you can help them see that even a small change in pH, a small decline in pH in this case, can be very, very uncomfortable for living organisms. And the Hold Your Breath activity allows people to experience that by actually creating ocean acidification in their own bodies. So usually at this point in this activity, I tell the audience, I'm going to ask you now to hold your breath while I continue to explain to you what's going on and how it relates to ocean acidification. So out there in webinar land, you can start holding your breath now. You can assure anybody that you do this demo with that they will not be harmed by the activity, and they can start breathing at whenever they really need to. The only point of this activity is that you want your audience to feel that discomfort that happens when you hold your breath. Okay, so maybe some of you are still holding your breath, but I'll carry on where I usually do in the explanation. So you're holding your breath now, and some of you are probably starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And if you could raise your hand and talk, you could tell me why you think this is happening, but I'll just project your thoughts. And I think that most of you believe that when you hold your breath and you start to feel that urge to breathe, it's because you think your brain is telling you that you're running out of oxygen. Well, actually, your brain has no idea how much oxygen you have in your bloodstream, because that's not what your brain monitors to keep track of whether you're breathing or not. What your brain measures and what sends up the alert signal when you fail to breathe is the amount of carbon dioxide in your own blood. Remember, when you breathe, you're not only taking oxygen in, you are exhaling carbon dioxide. That's the waste product of your own cells' metabolic activity. And if you don't exhale, then that carbon dioxide has nowhere to go. It builds up in your bloodstream, and it does the exact same thing in your bloodstream as carbon dioxide is currently doing in our oceans worldwide. That carbon dioxide is reacting with water molecules to form carbonic acid, and that carbonic acid is lowering the pH of your blood. Now, in the PowerPoint presentation that I usually show before I do any of these demos and that I have made available on this website, there's a slide with the pH scale as a graphic, and in the notes section of that slide you'll find all sorts of background information that's useful for this demonstration, and you'll be referring to that information when you conduct this activity with your audiences. And I'll just talk about it a little bit now. So you have seen on that pH graphic that seawater is currently pH 8.1. It's slightly basic. There's a little asterisk by seawater in that graphic, and that's to tell you that seawater used to actually be a little bit more basic. It used to be pH 8.2. What happened? Well, since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in the mid-19th century, which is when people began to burn fossil fuels and also clear land, deforestation is a contributor to acidification. All that carbon dioxide going up into the atmosphere has penetrated, has dissolved into our oceans, and as just happened in your bloodstream, it combined with water molecules to form carbonic acid. And over the last 150 years or so of humans' fossil fuel use, we've succeeded in reducing the pH of the oceans from 8.2 to 8.1. Now, That seems, again, kind of unimpressive, 0.1 pH units. It doesn't usually generate the reaction you want to when you're telling audience about how serious this problem is. So the first thing you should tell them is the pH scale is logarithmic, which means that every single pH unit change is actually a tenfold change. It's like the Richter scale. We all know that earthquakes, an earthquake of 7 is pretty severe, but an earthquake of 8.0 is 10 times as strong. Well, same with the pH scale. So pH 8 is 10 times, I'm sorry, I'll say it backwards. pH 7 is 10 times as acidic as pH 8, and pH 6 is 10 times as acidic as pH 7, and so forth. So when seawater changed from pH 8.2 to 8.1, that's actually a 30% increase in the acidity of the ocean. So that maybe will impress some people. Instead of a 0.1 pH unit decrease, the oceans are 30% more acidic now than they used to be before the Industrial Revolution. But actually, most people are still not that bothered, and that's why we do the breath holding video. So I hope no one is still holding their breath. But going back to where I was explaining that what your brain is actually monitoring when you start to feel uncomfortable from holding your breath is the decrease in pH of your own blood, I want to relate that to what's already happened in the oceans. So the oceans today are 0.1 pH units lower than they used to be. And what you probably experienced wasn't even a drop of 0.1 pH units. It was probably less than that. The medical term for too much carbon dioxide in your bloodstream is called hypercapnia. And if you look that up online, you can find descriptions of the symptoms of what happens as your blood pH drops. And if your blood were to drop by 0.1 pH units, it would be quite obvious that there was something wrong with you. You'd probably actually appear drunk. Your speech would be slurred, you might have trouble with your balance, and you wouldn't be able to think clearly. And here's the bad news. At current rates of carbon dioxide emissions, the oceans are projected to decrease further by another 0.3 to 0.24 pH units by the end of this century. And that translates to 150 to 200% increase in acidity. Now that's a big deal. That's something we really should not allow to happen. If that were to happen in your own body, a 0.3 unit pH unit decrease would put you in a coma or quite possibly kill you. So the hold your breath activity is really intended to convey to audiences that a small change in pH, a small decline, can nevertheless be quite significant to living organisms. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to say that this demonstration segues into another demonstration called Shells on Acid, and you can view that too on this website. And I want to make an important point. We are not shelled organisms. We are humans, and our hard parts are on the inside. But many organisms, marine organisms, have shells or hard parts, exoskeletons, on the outsides of their body. And those shells and hard parts are made of a mineral called calcium carbonate. Now, even though some marine organisms experience respiratory distress just the way you have as you were holding your breath, and it's due to the same thing, the hypercapnia, the elevated levels of carbon dioxide in their own bloodstream that reflect their environmental carbon dioxide levels. The most direct, profound, and well-known impact of ocean acidification currently is the effect of declining pH on the shells and exoskeletons of these shelled organisms, which are collectively known as calcifiers. Calcifier refers to the calcium carbonate material that they use to build these shells and hard parts. The next demo, Shells on Acid, shows what happens to the shells and skeletons of these organisms as the oceans become more corrosive to calcium carbonate as a result of increasing carbon dioxide levels. So I hope you tune in and watch that one too. And all of the demos that I've put up online are accompanied by protocols I've written up, giving you background details, narratives, and other helpful information. And those are also available as PDFs on this website. Thanks.